I never thought that a birthday, a day meant for joy and appreciation, would become the most humiliating moment of my life. Surrounded by the mock and laughter of his family, I was forced face first into a cake for an event I helped pay for. And when I stood up for myself against that humiliation, the crowd turned on me, blaming me as if I were the one at fault. I had paid to rent a private space in a restaurant to celebrate our joint birthday, as well as to mark an important milestone in my career. I wanted that day to be beautiful, meaningful, and unforgettable. I didn't just plan everything carefully. I took the time to make myself look my best, down to my hair and makeup. It was my way of showing respect, not just for myself, but for the event and the people who came to celebrate with us. And what did I get in return? A ridiculous, degrading spectacle where I was made the centerpiece of a public humiliation under the guise of fun. He, the man I called my boyfriend, the one who said he loved me, waited for the moment I was smiling next to the cake to pull what he and his family claimed was a classic prank, smashing my face into the cake. I fought back. I didn't stay silent, and I didn't consent. I used my whole body to resist being turned into a joke in front of my friends and his relatives. But instead of stopping, he used his size and strength to forcefully bend me down and shove my face into the cake. No longer a prank, but an act meant to humiliate. I have never felt so angry, ashamed, and powerless all at once. My friends got up to try to stop him, but his family cheered. They laughed, they cheered him on. They pulled out their phones to record me like I was some cheap entertainment act. When I finally broke free, he went further, smearing more cake into my hair and down my neck. I was no longer a person in their eyes, just a puppet to laugh at. Everything I had prepared, every effort I made to create a warm and memorable evening was shattered in minutes by his carelessness and the violent behavior he disguised as fun. And the most heartbreaking part, when I finally defended myself, with a single slap, I was the one condemned. Branded as overreacting, as the one with issues, as the girl who hurt his poor mother. But who stood up for me? Who saw that I wasn't just an angry woman in that moment, but a human being, fighting desperately to hold on to the last shred of her dignity? I had endured too much. I had tried to keep the party together, tried not to let the disappointment show in my eyes, as I was turned into a laughingstock in front of everyone. But the moment he raised his hand again, reaching to smear more cake on me, after already shoving my face into it, after I had fought back, cried, trembled, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I slapped him. It wasn't a slap meant to hurt. It was a slap that screamed, "Enough." And then silence fell. Not because they realized he was wrong, but because I, the woman who had just been humiliated, had dared to stand up for myself. The mood shifted, not because of the slap, but because the truth was exposed. I was no longer the obedient puppet for them to laugh at. His mother immediately stood up, loudly defending her son, then turned to argue with my friend. She didn't ask if I was okay, didn't ask why her son would do such a thing. To her, I was the one who ruined the party, the hysterical woman who dared to slap her son in front of everyone. They didn't see his actions as violent, as humiliating, as a clear violation. They only saw me, the one who reacted, as the problem. I walked to the restroom without another word, looking at myself in the mirror, my face covered in cake and colored frosting, hair a mess, makeup smeared. I couldn't even recognize the woman staring back. A woman who had once been proud of her accomplishments, who had looked forward to a warm, joyful evening, now left with flushed skin, empty eyes, and a heart fractured by betrayal from the person she loved. When I returned to the table, his entire family sat in silence, wearing expressions as if I had been the one to destroy everything. Not a single apology, not a word of comfort. Only judgmental looks, as if I were the one who had caused the scene. That was the moment I realized I hadn't just been betrayed by my boyfriend. I had been completely denied any empathy from his entire family. I told him clearly that his actions were unacceptable, that using me as the butt of a joke couldn't be brushed off as tradition. He simply replied that I had embarrassed him, that I had ruined everything. Not a single sincere apology. Not one second where he genuinely considered my feelings or my dignity as his partner. That night, I left with a broken heart and cake still clinging to my hair. And him, he still believed I owed him an apology, still thought everything was my fault for daring to respond to the humiliation he and his family caused. But I know this, if I had stayed silent that night, I would have been forced to stay silent for the rest of my life. And I'd rather be hated for defending myself than loved for knowing how to bow down and endure. After that terrible night, I sat down with him, not because I still expected a genuine apology, but because I needed to understand. How could someone I loved treat me that way? But instead of remorse, instead of recognizing the seriousness of what he had done, he tried to justify it. It was just a joke. Who hasn't had their face shoved into a cake before? That sentence felt like a bucket of cold water poured directly onto my dignity. In that moment, I painfully realized we don't speak the same language of respect. To him, using physical force to humiliate me in front of everyone was just part of fun. To me, it was an insult, a form of violence encouraged by the crowd, and a brutal reminder that he was willing to turn me into the butt of a joke, as long as his family got to laugh. That moment wasn't just a small accident at a party. It was living proof that I would never be respected if I stayed with that man. I had forgiven the little things in our relationship. Last year, when he was lazy and didn't prepare anything for my birthday, I let it slide. I said I didn't need expensive gifts, just thoughtfulness. But even when I tried to do good for both of us, he simply assumed he didn't have to try at all. Then when I achieved a small success at work and wanted to share the joy with him to celebrate together, his response was to make me the punchline at my own party. He even said to my face, "I chipped in too, you didn't pay for everything," as if putting in a little money for a cake gave him the right to trample on me in front of others, as if a person's worth could be measured by their share of a bill. He didn't understand or didn't care that the issue wasn't about money, but about disrespect, about a basic human right to feel safe, to be free, to be loved in your own space. I told him I felt humiliated, used, and exposed. And instead of facing the consequences of what he'd done, he blamed me. "Because you slapped me in front of my mom, right? Now it's my fault for reacting, not his for treating me like entertainment." He even made me apologize to his mother, the woman who sided with him simply because he's her son, and turned her back on the victim because she was upset. This wasn't just a difference in behavior. It was a difference in how we understood love and respect. And I knew once the man beside you can no longer tell the difference between joking and humiliating you, the relationship is no longer safe. Not physically, but emotionally and in terms of your dignity. After all the justifications, blame shifting, and refusal to take responsibility, I knew there was nothing left for me to hold on to. I had loved him with all the patience I had, with compassion for the income gap between us, for his shortcomings, but love is not a license to treat someone with disrespect. I didn't walk away because of a cake. I walked away because my dignity was trampled in front of a crowd, and the person who should have protected me was the one who did it. I don't need a man to be perfect, but I do need someone who respects me as a human being. I need a partner who can tell the difference between fun and humiliation. But when he sat there, stone-faced, telling me I had embarrassed him in front of his family, while I had just had my face shoved into a cake, my shirt stained red, crying in the bathroom, I understood he had never truly stood on my side. I told him straight to his face, "I can't forgive you, not because I'm bitter about the cake, but because you were so proud of making me a joke, and you only regret that I reacted, not that you were wrong." He was stunned, but even then he couldn't get past his selfish ego. He didn't mourn the loss of me. He mourned the loss of the control he used to have over me. I also made it clear to him that the party wasn't just a birthday celebration. It was how I wanted to mark a major milestone in my career. I had spent years pushing myself, relentlessly working to prove my worth in a demanding environment. But instead of being celebrated, I was covered in cake, forced to play the role of the funny, tolerant girl. No, thank you, that's not who I am. I walked away with my head held high. Even though my heart was still burning with anger and the wounds were fresh, I knew the worst thing I could do to myself was stay. I couldn't keep living next to a man who made me anxious every time we went out, wondering, will he embarrass me again today? And I refused to be the kind of woman my friends pitied for constantly enduring mistreatment. And when he said, "You never truly loved me," "If you did, you wouldn't have slapped me," I just smiled. Because if loving someone means having to quietly endure public humiliation, then I'm sorry, I'd rather not love at all. Love is not measured by a woman's silence when she's hurt. It is measured by respect. And in this relationship, that never existed. After I left, things didn't stop. He kept texting, calling, not with sincere apologies, but with blame. He blamed me for making a big deal out of it, for overreacting, and most of all, for not apologizing to his mother, a woman he claimed was mildly depressed and felt humiliated when she witnessed me slap her son. I was stunned, not by the request itself, but by the shamelessness behind it. No one in that family had stepped up to apologize for leaving me alone in the bathroom, face smeared with cake, dignity crushed. No one cared that I had been hurt, physically and emotionally violated, and now I was being asked to kneel with an apology simply because I refused to be the one who silently endured. I don't deny the slap, I'm not proud of it, but I don't regret it. I had been pushed to the edge. I said no, I struggled, I cried, I begged with my body, with my eyes. But no one listened. I had to protect myself. And if that slap was the only thing that managed to wake them up, even for just a few seconds, then I'll never apologize for it. I'd rather be called the difficult one than play the quiet victim in their ridiculous performance. And his mother? I understand she might be sensitive, might have felt hurt seeing her son get slapped, but she sat there and watched him shove me down onto a table, turn me into a public joke. And she laughed. She only felt pain when I slapped back, but didn't feel a thing when her son reduced me to a punchline on my special day. I don't owe her an apology. If anyone owes anyone something, it's him and her, who owe me a simple acknowledgement that what happened to me was wrong. I loved with sincerity, with actions. I sacrificed. I was patient. I tried so hard I nearly forgot my own worth. But I can't and won't keep forgiving repeated acts of disrespect. I chose to walk away, not because I stopped loving him, but because I finally started loving myself more. And if he says I never truly loved him because I slapped him, then I'll say this. If he ever truly loved me, he would never have given me a reason to slap him in the first place. This story isn't about a cake, it's about boundaries. And I've redrawn mine, with all the anger, all the pain, but also with the freedom I know I deserve. This is the end, and the beginning of a stronger, clearer version of me, who will never again settle for being someone else's shadow.